she used this phrase that said something like, Jazmina, always keep moving forward. Backwards, not even to gain momentum. Something like that in Spanish, it would be like, Jazmina, siempre hacia adelante, para atrás, ni para coger impulso.
Welcome to Latinx Can, a podcast showcasing Latinx professionals who turn their dreams into realities. I'm your host, la doctora Jenire Flores Delgado, and today I'm here with Dr. Jazmina Urriola, a scientist and entrepreneur who is on a mission to create a kinder, more inclusive world. And she's here to tell you, sí se puede, my friends, sí se puede. Dr. Jazmina Urriola, welcome to Latinx Can.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. I'm so excited to share your story with our listeners. Let's start by talking a little bit about where you come from and where your story begins.
Yes, of course. I was born in 1985 in Panama City, Panama, to two high school teachers. My dad used to teach history and philosophy. He's retired now. My mom used to teach what we would call home economics. And she also used to sew and make handcrafts as a side hustle. She could make anything from a wedding dress to a bag. So talented. She died of leukemia in 2016. But I can still recall the sound of the sewing machine rumbling through the house day and night. Both set for me an example of hard work and perseverance.
Right. And growing up in Panama, I also know from, knowing you that you were artistically inclined, right? You like dancing. You have very good Zumba moves. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, well, my mother, as I was telling you, she was so versatile and such a happy person. And growing as a child, I always saw my mother dancing, singing, and I developed that artistic inclination from her, I think.
And she was also the person who sort of motivated you to share your talents with the world, right? She encouraged you to get a first job as a TV host. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, my mother, she said that she was my biggest fan in the world. And she was. And, I was reading a book a couple of months ago. The author said that when you lose your mother, you lose your biggest fan. And that's true. That's the way I feel. Yeah. So, well, both of my parents used to be high school teachers. And high school teachers in Panama, they do not make a lot of money. Or at least they didn't used to. I've heard that things have changed a bit nowadays in Panama. But growing up as a teenager, I always noticed money was tied at home. And the reason being that they put me in a school, one of the best private schools at that time in Panama. Yeah. It was not the most expensive school, but it was expensive for them as high school teachers. And we also had moved into a new house that they bought in a middle-class neighborhood. And all this meant that at the end of every month, they were left with almost nothing from their paychecks. But my parents always used to tell me, Jazmina, we are a poor family. We don't have money. But as your parents, we want to make sure that in case anything happens to us and we are no longer here with you, you are left with a house and with the best education we can afford. And they always said, a good education is something no one can ever take away from you.
Right.
So witnessing that made me always carry this sense of sadness and guilt and gratitude all at the same time.
Yeah.
And it also made me want to do something to help ease my parents' financial burden and pay them back for all their effort and sacrifices.
Yeah.
So when I was 17 years old, on Saturdays at 6 p.m., I used to watch with my mother a local TV show about movies and celebrities. And it was hosted by two popular and fashionable teenage models in Panama.
Mm-hmm.
And one Saturday, they announced an open call for a new host. That was unusual because typically these programs pick their hosts from a tiny pool of girls from a renowned modeling agency. But this time anyone could audition. And my mother was so excited, Jazmina, you have to go. You would win. You know how mothers are always proud of their children and think that we are the smartest, the most talented, the most charismatic. And I was excited for the casting too, not because I wanted to be on TV, but because to me it was an opportunity to get a job and help at home. So the day of the casting, I arrived at 8 a.m. thinking I was on time, punctual, because that was the time of the casting. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be one of the first to audition. Not true, Jenny. When I got there at 8 p.m., there were already almost 400 girls in line. And it was a long day. My casting was around 8 p.m. I stood there for 12 hours. I only went to the restroom once, but the effort paid off. A couple of days later, I received a call for a second casting. And then a week later, I received another call from the producer, letting our parents and letting me know that I was the new host. And of course, I was over the moon.
That's such a cool story. I mean, it's nice when you don't expect anything from it. You try something and you don't really expect to maybe get the job or something like that. But it's important to show up to try, because if you don't try, then it's for sure a no, right? At the very least, you try it, and then at least you have the opportunity.
Yes, exactly. And after I got the job, it made me believe that despite all difficulties and hardship you sometimes face in life, because we were struggling with money at home, things can get better. I felt hopeful. And with my salary, I could then pay for my school tuition, school bus, groceries, and even treat my parents to a nice lunch now and then, and help them at home. So that was my main goal.
Yeah, and that's so important, right? Like I think you hit the nail in the head talking about hope. You can't lose hope no matter how hard things are, because otherwise you won't get the motivation to do the work that it takes to get somewhere.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And so working as a TV host and having sort of like a little bit of fame could have persuaded you to continue developing a career in entertainment, but you actually decided after high school to study biotechnology in Panama. Tell us a little bit of how that decision came about and how you decided to study biotechnology.
Well, working on TV was a wonderful experience. It opened doors of opportunity in modeling, TV commercials, dancing. And it was a whole new world of learning and growth. I definitely step outside my comfort zone because I'm a quiet person. I think I'm a little shy. But this experience helped me a lot, and also to become more disciplined and independent. But honestly, I never saw myself doing that as a job or as a career for the rest of my life. My true love was science, specifically biology. In my senior year of high school, I used to dream of one day working in a laboratory and wearing one of those cool biohazard suits you see in the movies. So in my senior year of high school, I applied to a biotechnology program that had recently started in Panama. I got accepted, but the full bachelor's program was $25,000, which
Wow.
for a lower middle class family in Panama, it's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I got a student loan, and this loan program stated in their contract that if you graduated top of your class, your debt would be canceled. You wouldn't have to
Yeah.
pay anything.
Wow.
So for 5 years, my goal was that to study and graduate top of my class. For 5 years, I attended college Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to, I believe, 4 p.m. And then I would go to work. When I was on the TV show, we would film once or twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was not working there anymore, I had dance rehearsals, modeling events, and I even worked as customer service representative at a call center from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. every
Wow.
day, 6 days a week. But after working so hard, after studying so much, I was able to graduate top of my class because we were such a small group, but it didn't matter.
Yeah.
And it didn't
Top is
matter.
top.
Yes, exactly. And my loan debt was canceled. I didn't have to pay anything. I think that when I received that news, that was one of the happiest days in my life.
It must have felt like it was, like your entire effort had paid off, right?
Yes,
Not just studying so hard, but also working so hard to be able to help your family and to make sure that you were able to support your parents and them, you as well.
exactly. And it's hard, and there are some moments when you want to quit and you don't understand if everything is ever going to pay off. But my mother, she would always try to keep me motivated. She used to be the ultimate motivator. And she she used this phrase that said something like, Jazmina, always keep moving forward. Backwards, not even to gain momentum. Something like that in Spanish, it would be like,
Yeah.
Jazmina, siempre hacia adelante, para atrás, ni para
Ni para
coger
correr
impulso.
impulso.
And I love that.
Yes.
And my father would always try also to keep me motivated with all these phrases. Remember, you may lose the battle, but not the war. And whenever, I felt down, and it really helped. But, working and that goal of helping at home and trying to honor their effort and all their sacrifices was what always kept me going.
Yeah. And I can imagine you probably also developed a very strong sense of discipline from going to school and then going to work and having dance rehearsals and things like that. And from my personal experience, I know, and I'm not shy about this, I tell everybody I'm extremely disciplined, and I am that way because of the sports that I played when I was growing up, right? For me, it's not a question of whether I can do something, but what is it that I have to do something? Because I know that once I figure out what I need to do, I have this discipline to do it, and I will get there.
Yes, I agree. All those experiences help you become more accountable, more disciplined, more organized. Definitely.
Absolutely. After you completed your bachelor's in biotechnology at the top of your class, you decided to then pursue a PhD program. How did you realize that you wanted to do more than, you wanted to get to that next level? And why did you choose Texas A&M University to do your PhD at?
When I was doing my bachelor's, I realized that there was so much I didn't know, and that I wanted to go somewhere else, learn more about my field, then come back to Panama and apply there whatever I had learned. And I also wanted to learn more about the world, the other people, to get outside my tiny bubble in Panama.
Mm-hmm.
So I applied for a PhD scholarship from the government in Panama. I got it. And then with my scholarship, I applied to a couple of universities in Spain, in China, in the US. You know how it is. You have to send several applications to make sure at least one university accepts you.
Right.
And I got accepted at a couple of them, including Texas A&M University.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, the president of Panama, he used to be an Aggie at Texas
Oh, wow.
A&M.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure, exactly. So there was an agreement between the government of Panama and Texas A&M to, send students to study there. And the recommendation from the government was to go there to attend Texas A&M University, which was fantastic, right? Texas A&M is a fantastic university, and they are very strong in agricultural research, which was my interest at that moment. I wanted to do research in genetic engineering in agricultural crops. So I started in spring of 2009, and I was there for 4.5 years. And those years have been some of the best years of my life. A lot of personal growth, and hey, that's where I met my husband.
Yeah.
And where I met you.
Yes, I have such great memories. I remember, when I went to Texas A&M, I didn't think about going to a place where I would feel at home. And when I got there, I was the only Latina in my chemistry department. And I also didn't know any other Latinos or Latinx people at A&M. Because I wasn't in the petroleum engineering department where all of them were, right? And so I felt very lonely at the beginning. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, I had my friends in chemistry. I had a friend from Greece that we instantly connected because we were the outsiders, right? But, I mean, I liked it. I was okay, but I was missing something. And then I met one Venezuelan, Francisco, at the petroleum engineering department. And then I met the rest, and I felt like at home,
Yes, no, that's nice. And I understand you, because when I first arrived at College Station, which is such a small town, the first people that I met were from Panama. 2 Panamanian went to the airport and picked me up.
Oh, nice.
Yes, that was nice. So at least I had them. And then, but in my department, there were almost no Latinx people. My closest friend used to be from Turkey, I remember. And it was very interesting because that was the first person from Turkey that I had ever met in my life.
Yeah. And so, because you had this scholarship from the government in Panama, part of the requisite of that scholarship was that at the end of your studies, you return to Panama to give back to your country from the knowledge that you gain, right? Tell us how that went for you, after being away for 4.5 years. What was it like to go back to Panama?
It was very rewarding. To me, when you are in grad school, you learn a lot, not only about your field, but also a lot about yourself. And my years in grad school were years, as I said before, of personal growth. I became more aware of what my interests, passions were, self-awareness. And I remember my PhD advisor, he would kill me if he heard this. He used to tell me, Jazmina, remember that your goal after graduating must be to have your own lab. I always thought, what if that is not what I want to do? Because you have to be honest with yourself. And when I was in grad school, I realized that I enjoy not only doing bench work, but also working on other things that had to do with policies, science policies, research administration, that has nothing to do with a pipette. And those areas are also key for the advancement of any science and technology ecosystem. They're critical. So when I went back to Panama, I joined the National Secretariat for Science, Technology, and Innovation, which is a government institution. There I was leading a nationwide project to provide researchers with access to scientific literature, to online databases. And I also served as scientific advisor to the National Biosafety Commission. And it was such a fulfilling experience to contribute to science and technology and research in Panama, but in a different way, from backstage, behind the scenes.
I think, you mentioned something really important, and then is this opportunity that we also have in grad school to explore what's behind the bench or what's beyond the bench, right? I think that's so important because the culture in grad school, similar to what your advisor told you or used to tell you, is like, you must work hard, you must be in the lab, you must work incredible long hours in the lab to advance the science, and then you become a professor and you have your own lab, right? But there's so many different paths, right? And the reality is that finding a job in academia as a professor is incredibly difficult. It's not impossible, but it's really, really difficult, right? And not everybody who gets a PhD gets to be a professor as well. And so because there are so many different paths that you can follow, you should explore.
Yes, that's correct. There are always statistics and numbers about how many PhD students are enrolling in doctoral programs in the country, and how many professor, assistant professor opportunities are there for all those students. So it's not realistic that every or most of the PhD students are going to end up working as professor. And also, it's not realistic to think that all of those students want to work as a professor.
Yeah.
So it's very important, as you said, to explore other paths and to be honest with yourself. What am I good at? What do I really want to do with this degree? Because when you go to grad school for a master's, for a doctoral degree, you develop so many skills that you can transfer to other types of jobs, not necessarily and not only you can apply them to a lab job or a job in academia, as we are often told.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that one thing that I would add is that once you get into a PhD program, you should explore things early on, because the earlier you find those interests that you talk about via self-awareness, then the more opportunities you get to enjoy or to take advantage of while you're still in grad school. I, for example, I took a business certificate because eventually I realized that I probably wanted to work in industry, not in academia.
Okay.
And so I still had to take classes, right? Like we have to register for classes classes every semester. And so I talked to my advisor and I asked her if instead of registering for the research hours, I could register for the business certificate classes. And she said it was fine because it was the same money. She didn't have to pay any extra money. And so I was able to take advantage of that certificate. But had I known about it earlier, I would have done other things. I still have to put in the time in the lab. I still have to maintain everything that, is related to my chemistry degree, but I can use a little bit of the extra time, the free time that we get to advance other skills.
Yes, no, I'm glad that you were able to take advantage of that opportunity, because not all professors are willing to let their students do that. And in my case, that was the reality. My advisor didn't want me to do much outside or besides research, because he was worried that I wouldn't be able to make enough progress in my thesis. But I think that that things are changing. And then more and more professors are understanding the importance to let their mentees or their students to explore areas beyond what they do in their thesis.
And so then you mentioned earlier that when you were at Texas A&M, you met your husband, and now your husband, right? So when you're in Panama, you decide then to come back to the States under different circumstances, right? Now you decide to explore your personal life a little more. How was that experience? How do you make a decision to leave your job, a job that was so rewarding, to come back to the States?
It was hard. While I was in Panama, I had this kind of on and off long distance relationship with this super smart and cool guy I had met in grad school. And after he graduated, he got a job in Texas. So he was living there all that time now here, because I'm here. He was living in Texas all the time. But in 2016, we decided to get married. And we also agreed that the best thing for us and our future family was that I moved to the United States instead of him moving to Panama. And in 2017, I moved back to the U.S. as his dependent. Being his dependent meant that I was not allowed to work until I got my employment authorization. And we didn't know how long that was going to take. And even though both of us had agreed and believed that that was the best decision for me to move in here, it was hard. I left my father, which is now almost 80 years old. I left my job, and leaving my job made me feel like I was losing a part of my identity that I felt defined me, my career. And this left me with a hollowness inside, and worry, anxiety, self-doubt, and fear. When am I going to be able to work again? Is anyone going to hire me with this growing gap in my resume? And I also sometimes felt like I was failing and being a failure to my parents, who had worked so hard to educate me and to get me where I was. And I was not working, and I felt I was no longer honoring those efforts and sacrifices.
It must have been a very difficult decision, right? Because from what I can tell, that's not the way that you were raised. You were raised to be independent and self-sufficient. And so having to come here and make the decision to depend on somebody else must have been very, very difficult.
Yes, it was. It doesn't only have to do with, okay, now I depend from my husband's salary, what he makes, but it's a matter of pride of being independent after always trying to provide to my parents to support. Now I was feeling like I was not being useful, or I was not doing anything for anyone. It was hard.
But you were still strategic about it, right? Like, during this time, you decide to start a family with your husband because since you were going to be away from the workforce for some time, you decided to take advantage of that opportunity to start a family. How did that develop for you?
Right. Since we didn't know how long it was going to take for us to receive our green card and our employment, or my employment authorization, we decided and planned on having a child to make the most of the free time that I had. I was at home, so I got pregnant. And when I was in my 20th week of pregnancy, I went to my regular checkup, and I was so happy because the previous weekend had been my baby shower. And there I was at the doctor's appointment, and she was performing the regular sonogram, and she noticed that there was something unusual in the sonogram. I remember she said, "Well, I don't see the baby's legs, but he has legs." Okay. But maybe the baby is in a position that doesn't allow us to see his legs. Let me send you to this other doctor who happened to have a more sophisticated equipment, and he was able to see the baby much more clearly. And so I went directly to his office, and again there was something, but I was fine. I thought, okay, maybe the baby is, as the other doctor said, in a weird position. But then the doctor looked at me and he said, "Your baby is going to be very short." I couldn't understand. He was trying to tell me something, but I didn't understand what he was trying to tell me.
You're like, okay, well, 5'3". I mean, what does that mean?
Exactly. It was confusing. And he asked me, is it possible for you to call your husband right now and ask him to come? And then I started crying. Again, I was not getting what the doctor was trying to tell me. Because very short, what does that mean? I know a lot of short stature people, but what's the problem with that? And we eventually understood that our son was probably going to suffer from dwarfism.
Wow.
Oh. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Yes, and it was hard because, first of all, at the beginning, we didn't understand exactly what does it mean to have a son with dwarfism. We didn't know anyone who had dwarfism. That was something unfamiliar to us, and we didn't know what was the cause. We were confused. And it's only normal to fear something that you don't understand.
Absolutely.
And that's what was going on with us. Those were hard months, honestly. We were confused. We didn't know what would happen. I was worried. What does this mean? Is my son going to be able to walk? So much confusion. But then we started to understand that Enzo was probably going to have a rare genetic condition called achondroplasia, which is the most common form of dwarfism. If you or any one of the people that is listening to this podcast have ever watched Game of Thrones, you may have seen this character Tyrion. The actor he has dwarfism, and sometimes my husband jokes that Enzo, our son, is our little Tyrion.
Well, he's got the TV genes from you, right? He
Yeah.
can be a star.
Yeah, that's why. But as I said, when you don't know something or you don't understand, you fear, you are scared. But we started to educate ourselves, and we found support in specialists here in Dallas. And it was not that scary after all.
Yeah.
What happens is that dwarfism is a rare genetic condition. Dwarfism would occur in 1 in every 20 to 40,000 birds.
Okay.
So it's very rare. And when Enzo was born and I saw him, I thought, he's perfect. He's perfect the way he is. And now he is 2 years old. And yesterday he was playing with a little car in the living room. And I was thinking, he's just like any other kid who loves to play, who likes cookies, who throw tantrums. But he's physically different from average kids, obviously. But that should not, and that is not going to be an impediment for him to thrive, to be a productive member of the society, and to live a fulfilling life.
Yeah. Wow, Jazz, thank you so much for sharing that with us. It actually reminds me, when I was in college, I volunteered at a camp for children with disabilities because I honestly didn't want to spend all my summers in Venezuela not doing anything productive. So my friend found this opportunity and he told me about it. And I was like, okay, sure. So I volunteered at this camp, and it was a camp for children. And then at different weeks, it would also be adults who have disabilities. So they could be blind, or they could be, on a wheelchair, or they could have MS. And we saw many different aspects of disabilities. Some just have very light forms of autism, and some had very advanced MS, for example. But, what I learned in that experience is that the kids don't know any different, right? Eventually they will grow up to know that they are different from everybody else. But while they're growing up, they're just kids, and they're just funny. They are mischievous. They just want to have friends like everybody else. And it's up to us, the adults and those quote unquote regular people, to get over our own, misunderstanding or ignorance, so that we can open up to accept them in our society, right? Because they're just regular people who want to be part of a community.
Exactly. Each of us has the responsibility to educate ourselves and to become more open to the fact that we are all different. And people always say, oh yeah, that phrase, we are all different. But when you have a child with developmental differences, that phrase really has a meaning. It's not just a cool, trendy phrase anymore. It's your reality, is what you live every day. Your kid is different. But in the case of a person with dwarfism, that difference is more obvious, because when you have a person with dwarfism next to you, you immediately notice it, right? And that's the reason for which there's so much discrimination against people with dwarfism. Other people call them names and they bully them. And it's hard because even though, as you said, my son, he's just as any other average height kid. He's going to face those challenges as he grows up. But it's my responsibility to educate myself, to help him grow as a person with an understanding that that should not be an impediment for him to thrive, as I said previously, but also to educate our community.
So, Jazmina, Enzo is, of course, your motivation to be a better person and the best mom you can be. And he's also the motivation that led you to become an entrepreneur by founding Kinstride. Tell us what Kinstride is all about and how do you come up with the concept?
Yes, when Enzo was born, my whole world changed. When you have a child with developmental differences, you learn a lot about yourself and the world you live in. At first, balancing being a professional, a wife, and the mother of a child with a disability wasn't easy, but it's helped me learn how to be kinder, more compassionate to myself and the people around me. I've learned how to make time to care for myself physically, mentally, so that I can take care of others, of Enzo, my son, my family. And also having Enzo has made me more aware of many challenges faced by minorities in our communities, including people with disabilities like my son. And that's what sparked the idea for Kinstride. We are on a mission to create a kinder, more inclusive way to practice self-care. We started as an e-commerce company, and we are developing a membership service to encourage women and empower them to make time for their self-care and to care for their health, mentally, physically. And we're focusing on women from minority groups that don't see themselves, their needs, and their experiences represented in the mainstream self-care industry.
So interesting what you're saying because, you know, I'm not a mother, but I do know that when people become mothers, they're, like you said, the whole world changes and now they don't live for themselves, they live for their children. And it is very easy for mothers to forget that they have to take care of themselves, like you said, before they can take care of somebody else. So it becomes so important to have that top of mind for people so that you can make an intentional effort to take care of yourself. So tell us a little bit more about what this subscription is and how does it work to be part of the Kinstride family?
Yes, what you were saying is true. People always say that you have to fill your cup because you can't pour from an empty cup. So you have to first take care of yourself in order to be able to care for your family, for your friends, and the people around you. And the way we are trying to create a more inclusive way to practice self-care is through a membership service that will deliver right to the doorstep of our members a bi-monthly curation of 4 to 5 items ranging from self-care activities, do-it-yourself projects, to wellness products. And these curations are aimed at reminding women to slow down, pause, and take care of their physical and their mental health, fight stress, so that they can be able to do all the rest of the things that we are expected to do in our day-to-day lives.
Yes.
Which is a lot, right? As a woman, you're trying to do it all. And it's not realistic if you don't take care of yourself. Self-care is not superficial, it's not narcissistic, it's a must. Especially nowadays with all the stress that we are facing from the pandemic, it's important. And for these curations, we draw inspiration from psychological research. So we are really intentional with every item included in our boxes. And unlike other e-commerce companies that offer similar products, we are focusing on sourcing the items in each box from small, women, minority, and disabled-owned businesses. to support these communities also in a different way, in the way we source our products and create more opportunities for them. And also, as we grow our business, our goal is to not only offer a physical, tangible product, but also pair this box of products with digital resources that can help our members also take care of themselves, including, tools for relaxation techniques, meditations, video lessons. But that is something that it's in process. We are working on it.
Yeah. And one of the things that you said just now is that, for one, me time is important. Having or taking that time to take care of yourself is really important. But like you said, it has also become this trendy thing that goes online where everybody is so sort of like superficially enjoying their me time. And for me, that has always been quite hard to relate to, because I can understand how like a long bath with a mask on can be relaxing, but it also, for me specifically, it seems superficial. But I like that you say that a lot of this items that you put in your boxes are based on science and neuroscience and maybe neuroplasticity. So why don't you tell us a little more about how you choose what goes into a box, and maybe if there's sort of a trend of things that go into the box every other month?
Many people think of self-care as something trivial, as you mentioned, just put on a mask and that's self-care. Self-care is not simply about pampering, and although treating yourself can be a way to show yourself self-love in a healthy way, but it's not all about that. So self-care is about preserving your health, forming healthy habits, taking care of your physical and your mental health. And it's all backed by science and by research done, especially by psychologists. And that's the way we curate our boxes. We take into consideration what research says, what activities are good for your mental health to take care of your brain, and taking that information from research. Although it sounds, simple and easy, no, it's important. It's just not, we just not include anything, and everything in our box. We pay attention to what psychologists said, what activities are good for your brain health. We want to include that in our box so that our members can make time to sit down and enjoy their free time, but also in a way that is healthy and it's good for them. And the same goes for the rest of the items that we include. Everything counts, right? But it's not what is important is how we think about self-care also. It's not just sitting, as I said, and putting on a mask. Is understanding that the importance of that time is that you are slowing down, that you are trying to reduce the stress that can affect and damage your brain.
And Jazmina, I know that, the subscriptions are available for the United States. Is that for all 50 states?
Yes, currently we are shipping boxes in the United States and Puerto Rico.
Oh, fantastic. And one of the things then, we do have a few people that listen to our podcast outside of the United States, in Europe, in Asia, in Australia, and of course in Latin America. But I think that's only my dad who listens. But for people who are outside of the United States, even though they can get the box shipped to their house, they can still go on Keenstride and look at the items that are available on the shop. And even if they cannot get it through Keenstride, they can still draw that benefit from the thought that you have put into selecting all of these books, especially that can also help them wherever they are.
Yeah, that's true. And They can join us in social media, follow us in Instagram, Facebook, whatever they prefer, where we also share content, also educational content about self-care and the importance of making the most of the time that you have for you. And so I invite all of your listeners wherever they are, and I'm so glad that you have listeners everywhere, Janine, to join us and follow us and join the conversation.
Absolutely. I think we can still be connected even if we're far away. And so one other thing that I wanted to learn about you, because your official education is as a scientist and not necessarily as an entrepreneur. But here you are drawing from your scientific skills, understanding the literature and understanding research and how that is applied on our daily basis, and then combining that with being an entrepreneur. How did you find the support to become this new person, this entrepreneur, and what kind of resources did you take advantage of in order to bring your business to float?
It's not easy to start a company if you don't have a clue of what you're doing, and that's what happened to me at the beginning. But the good thing is that there are so many resources out there online in our communities. And when I first started researching about my business idea, I found that there was Women Business Center in Dallas. And this was all at the beginning of the pandemic. So things were going, all the meetings and people started meeting online. So that was good because from home, I was able to get access to resources, to orientation. And that is how I started through this Women's Business Center in Dallas. They provided me with templates. They referred me to more people that could help me. And that was really, really helpful. So I would say that no matter what stage of the entrepreneurial journey someone is, whether they are only at a business idea stage or they already have an established business, it's important to reach out. Do not hesitate in reaching out and asking for help, because there are a lot of people that are willing and ready to help you and that want new entrepreneurs to succeed.
Excellent. I'm excited about Keenstride. I'm actually going to buy my second box as my birthday gift for this month. So one of the things I want to tell you is that I enjoy that things are based on science and that I can use that time purposely, not just as a way to feel good, but also as a way to actually build skills and improve my mental ability and my mental health.
I'm glad to hear that. And I'm so happy that you've joined us. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity to share with you and your listeners.
Okay, so let's remind everybody where they can find you on social media.
You can follow us at Keenstride in Instagram, and also we're under the same name, Keenstride, in Facebook, or you can visit our website. Website is keenstride.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. And if you want to put a face to the voices you just heard, you can follow us on Instagram at Latinx Can. If you have questions or feedback for us, you can email us at latinxcan@gmail.com. And if you like this episode, please leave a review. It is the quickest way to grow as a community. Once again, thank you for listening, and remember, unidos somos más.